Economic forces. We talked about economic forces, recession, inflationary trends. So we talked about we had gone through a recession, slowdown, and then it goes to recession, and then finally it goes into contraction. So I think high inflation leads to demand declining. Once the demand declines, the growth also declines. And when the growth slows down, it goes into a slow growth phase and recession phase. Sometimes, there could be a contraction, means negative growth in the economy. I'm not talking about India. There are many global economies post Lehman Brothers crisis, financial crisis in 2008. They went through a major recession. Recession means a negative growth, a continuous negative growth beyond 2 quarters. Then you declare the recession, and the job market will be hit, the stock markets will be hit, investments will not come, people will be going through major cut in their expenditure. Companies will go through a major cut in their expenditure. The government will go through a major cut in their expenditure. So the economy will completely slow down. It will come to a grinding halt in some cases. Then depending on which part of the curve you are in inflation or deflation or the stagflation or the monetary policies, changes can happen accordingly. We'll talk about that. There are different scenarios. We'll talk about it. Trade agreements, economic conditions, economic policies, distribution of income, savings rate, and wealth creation. So this is going to really impact, economic growth is going to impact these different factors. So you need to look at it. If I'm not getting salary increment every year, my saving rate goes down. I may not invest in new things. I may be investing in only in LIC policy, but not in mutual funds and not in stock markets. So policy distribution, income distribution, it gets impacted across the pyramid. The pyramid is huge for India. Currency rates, we talked about exchange rate, fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, current account deficit. They all play an important role in the economic development of the country. So there are multiple moving parts which are there in the economy. So everybody, the different stakeholders look at it differently, and they take action, policy decisions, policy actions from time to time, periodically and regularly, and then they review it in order to ensure that the country is the most preferred destination for everything, for the investors, for jobs, for doing business with, for setting up new facilities, manufacturing plants. So I think all these things have major impact. Most importantly, monsoon, the rains that happen during the month of June to September. If rains don't come, it will have a major impact on the economy. If you don't get average rainfall, then the agriculture economy gets impacted. So because of which certain companies who are actually doing business, for example Mahindra and Mahindra doing tractor business, you will not get new orders for tractors. So agriculture economy will impact certain companies directly if monsoon is going to fail. If monsoon goes below average, then it's going to be a major problem. If monsoon goes above average and then it hits a breakout, which is a flood situation, then again it will impact the economy, because flood relief and excavating people from flood hit areas, all these things will happen together, and it's going to cost a lot of money for the government. And at the same time, people will be suffering, and in some areas the crops will get washed away. You might have heard, then the agriculture production goes down. If paddy fields and the wheat fields get washed away in floods, what will happen? It will impact the economy again. So these are major economic forces. Growth. What are the growth drivers for an economy? Economic reforms and policies taken by the government which will favor the industry in terms of growth, in terms of facilitating doing business. Falling interest rates, falling inflation, low fiscal deficit, and low current account deficit. So we'll talk each one of this now. We'll talk about each one of this. Let's talk about inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is the percentage that clearly describes the amount that you pay high or low in a year for a particular commodity or a particular group of products It could be food inflation, it could be a consumer index, it could be a core inflation. So it is basically measured in demand versus supply. If the demand is high and supply is less, what happens? Inflation goes up, because there are more people trying to buy the product, but the supplier is trying to make money, or he is going to increase the price because he is already seeing great demand for his products or service. So that is demand versus, so it's an equation between demand and supply, simple. Demand versus supply. If the demand is high, if the supply is less, then probably you're heading into a high inflationary state. If the supply is high, if the demand is less, you are heading towards a disinflationary pressure, because obviously, you're producing more, but there are no buyers. So obviously the prices will come down. So that is called deflation or disinflation. So how does it impact? There is a tight correlation between inflation and growth. There are different scenarios: high growth and low and moderate inflation, high growth and high inflation, low growth and high inflation, low growth and low inflation. These are 4 possible scenarios. There could be some other scenarios also that at a particular point in time. Let's take up these 4 at this point in time in a growth cycle, because every time the growth is not going to be linear. Growth is going to go through fluctuations. It is going to go up and then stabilize and then come down a little bit and then go up. Sometimes the external environment can impact in such a way that the growth can finally fall to a level which is demarcating between growth and recession. So some situations will happen. US has gone through, Europe has gone through, US has gone through in 2008, 9, 10. Europe went through in 10, 11, 12. So we have seen all of that in the last 5 years. So how do we relate it to Indian economy? High growth, low moderate inflation. Growth in economy directly leads to increase in income levels, because growth, when all companies, the economy is growing, you get more salary, you get more, government spends more, government has got a lot of social sector programs like Narega and other things. You get your salary increments, instead of 2-3%, you'll get 10-12% or 15% or 20% salary increment. You have a lot of disposable income. So when you have a lot of disposable income, your purchasing power becomes more. When your purchasing power becomes more, you go and buy more, obviously, more than what you need. Instead of 1 car, you'll buy 2 cars. Or instead of 1 bike, you'll get 2 bikes. Instead of 1 TV, you'll get 2 TV. Instead of 1 house, you'll buy 2 houses. So when you have that capability to buy more, so obviously the demand grows and the growth also happens there. So disposable income drives up buying power, which again fuels inflation, right? So the demand goes up, and then supply takes a lag effect will be there. So that will impact the inflation to go up year on year. Demand supply gap continues to fuel inflation for an extended period. In this case, when it comes to a point where the demand has very peaked out, and the growth also has peaked out, and it gets a correction mode. It gets into a correction mode. The augmented capacity will take time to create more supply. That's when you get into a high growth and high inflation phase. Inflation increases to elevated levels. RBI tightens the monetary policy. That is where the repo rates and reverse repo rates and statutory levels, statutory holdings by banks, all that will be reviewed with a hard look at the economy. Inflation is high, it will impact the common man. Not so, but the bottom of the pyramid, people are buying, living on day-to-day earnings, because they have to pay more for vegetables, they have to pay more for food, they have to pay more for other lively things which are for their livelihood. So the tightening of policy leads to increase in interest rates, which is a vicious cycle. Banks pass on the high interest rates to customers. Your home loan and your personal interest loan or your car loans, everything starts increasing. We have seen that it has gone to 8% levels, and then it went up to 14-15% levels, right? So when this kind of situation, inflation goes very high in double digits, so this kind of situation happens. High inflation adversely affects the economy, and it pulls down the demand again. The cost of doing business increases significantly for companies. The demand comes down, obviously, because the cost is going up. People stop buying, anymore. So inflation became deep-rooted before government rolled back the fiscal stimulus. It happened in 2012. Inherent inflationary pressures acting on the economy as prices hurt the economic growth. So high prices, when the commodities and articles prices become high, inflation becomes very high and it will hurt the growth. So it has come to a level of 9. It happened in 10-11. Inflation also was in double digit. The trade-off was too high. You can't have a high inflation and high growth. You can have low, moderate inflation and high growth, which is an idealistic situation. Because inflation follows, in a way, growth is going high. But it cannot be, inflation is at 10, 12 percentage points, 10 to 11, 12%, and the growth is at 9%. So what happens? So the net real interest rate is not, not favorable to aiding the economy, in aiding the growth of the economy anymore. So these disinflationary pressures acting on the economy, and the growth starts, get capped and it starts declining. Lower demand creates pressure on supply side to reduce prices. Obviously, inflation is an equation between supply versus demand versus supply. Softening of interest rates and enablement of GDP growth. So then it happens, interest rates are getting reduced. Low growth and low inflation. So it reaches, the growth finally falls. Inflation also falls because of demand, becoming less and supply becoming more, because that's the cycle, Banks unleashes easy monetary policies to stimulate the demand. So RBI policy will be to reduce interest rates to help the economy, because inflation has already fallen and they are able to see that I can release more money into the market. Developed world economies keep the interest rates at lower, near zero level. Whether it is Japan is almost nil. US is 0.25%. So that's the RBI rates there. Quantitative easing and bond purchases trigger release of money into the system. The Federal Reserve of US had been going through quantitative easing 1, 2, and 3. Now the 3 is running, and now 3 is being tapered. The taper of the QE3 program will pull out money back from the market. Interest rates. Short-term and long-term interest rates affect the consumer spending pattern, which is talked about, right? So there are short-term and long-term. Short-term is for your, you're buying a white good for 3 years, 5 years loan. For example, a scooter or a two-wheeler or a car. All these come under short-term interest rate, short-term loans. You're buying a home. You'll buy a home for 20 years. So the loan rate will be accordingly adjusted. So we have both needs, short-term needs and long-term needs. It affects the consumer spending pattern. If it is high, people will not go for buying a home. Interest rate is high, the house price is high. Why should I let me wait? Wait for the interest rate to come down, right? Short-term interest rate consists of overnight borrowing and credit cards. So that's what we take a loan from the credit card company against our credit card. Corporate level interests influence strategic decisions related to short and long term financing and impact capex spending for business expansion. Rates also affect capital expenditure. What happens in a scenario when the interest rates go down, capex level increases. Capex cycle starts. When the capex cycle starts, the low growth rate also goes into start the growth. That is exactly the stage India is in today. Today, in the last 1 year, our inflation was high, and in the inflation, including the core inflation and the food inflation, it has started coming down from the double-digit levels, and the interest rates had been, it had peaked. It was being hiked, but it had peaked, and now it is in a level. The next people are expecting the interest rates will come down, and it will aid the growth of economy, which we are already seeing in the Q1, which I said earlier. So the interest rates will start moving up. Sorry, the interest rates will start going down. The growth rate will start moving up. That is when the capital expenditure also, many companies will start expanding, and they'll get into diversification. They'll put more money into their business, both for expansion and diversification. So it's going to be good times. We are going to see good times going forward. So we are seeing the capex cycle starting here on. Exchange rates. Currency rates are influenced by global economic conditions because how much money India needs in terms of sustaining our growth, sustaining our economy, consumption in the economy. So we also need foreign money. We need foreign money to sustain growth and so second is export import surplus or deficit. The third one is domestic and international bond yields and central bank's monetary policy. So these are some of the factors that impact currency rates. So currency rate, Indian currency rate is today 60 rupees. So it is all about the liquidity available. It is all about which part of the equation you are in. Suppose the rupee demand is high because the foreign capital flows are coming in. They feel that India is going to hit the 9% growth in the next 1 or 2 years. Obviously, the foreign capital will flow in. A lot of dollars, US dollars will come in. So there will be a lot of demand for Indian rupee. So when that happens, rupee appreciates. Rupee has already appreciated from 68, a low of 68 to high of 58, 59, 60. The last 3 months, we are seeing 58, 59, 60, which is a good thing. Now it has stabilized. It has stabilized in that 2 rupee level. So, so domestic and international bond yields also, it impact the rupee levels. Strengthening of US dollar puts pressure on the currencies of the emerging markets. So US dollar strengthens, our rupee gets impacted because the common denomination across the global trade or global business is on US dollar. So when US dollar is being used by most of the countries, obviously Indian rupee is a very small component of the overall foreign exchange index, so it will impact. Appreciating rupee helps Indian exporters. Obviously, when you export, you get more money, more Indian rupee. So obviously, appreciating dollar and depreciating rupee is helping the export market. However, it will impact the import business because you are paying more money to import your goods. Because import is also equally important for sustaining Indian economy because there is a lot of consumption happening. India is not fully ready to completely produce all the goods which it needs for consumption. We need to import a lot of things like oil, for example, crude oil. So many factories are running, so many vehicles are running, so many we need more petrol, more diesel, more kerosene. So we have to import because we don't have that much capacity within India. So we have to import and we pay more every time you import because you're paying it in dollars. So that's what it means. Current account deficit, difference between the capital inflows and capital outflows, which we have seen, the difference between the trade balance, the trade deficit, as measured as part of the GDP. So current account deficit should be in the range of 2 to 3%. It went up to 5-6% 1 year back. After RBI measures and government measures and ban on gold and global oil prices coming down from $120 to $102, $103. I think it has aided a lot, and then there was NRI funding also happened, special scheme floated by RBI. So it attracted $5 to $6 billion worth of 15 to 20 billion dollars worth of capital into the country. So as of today our foreign exchange reserve is somewhere around $320 billion, which is the highest which we have seen in the last 5 years. CAD is also referred as current account deficit is also referred as balance of payments because we are positive. Surplus means positive, which is a good news because we can take care of our consumption for the next 9 months, for example. With this $325 billion, we are quite funded in that perspective. Hypothetically, we have quite enough funds to take care of our imports. Trade deficit is one of the key components of current account deficit. That's the difference between import and exports. India imports gold, crude oil, capital equipment for many industries to sustain our growth. So this is again a very important thing you must consider in the strategic management process. What is fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit is very important because your foreign rating agencies like Moody's or S&P or Fitch, all these 3 rating agencies will look at government finances. How healthy is your government? Is it debted, or how much borrowing it does in a year, from RBI? So it's very important, the difference between government's revenue and its expenditure. Government cannot spend money without the ability to raise a lot of revenues in the form of taxes and duties and indirect taxes, and government needs taxes, but it can't overburden the economy by having high level of taxation or taxation. At the same time, you can't have high level of expenditure also. Government cannot recklessly spend money on programs and schemes which are not going to be productive or not going to reach the growth, reach the sectors which are supposed to get benefit. So I think it's very important. So to have a prudent kind of decision, so the rating agencies will give a rating to Indian economy, Indian government balance sheet. So you cannot have a balance sheet which is very high in deficit. The deficit should be in the range of again 2 to 3%. Some governments have surplus, which is good, which is a great thing to have. But our deficit is somewhere around 4.5 to 5, which is still high at this point in time. The credibility of Indian government is still not retained. It has not come back because still we are talking about 4.5 to 5% fiscal deficit. But the finance minister has clearly said this financial year, FY14 and 15, we will reach the fiscal deficit level of 4.1% of GDP, which is a good news. So let's see how it is going to happen. The growth will happen. When the growth is happening, more taxation will happen, absolute terms, and that will aid the government to pay back some of the debts. The disinvestment process is another thing, and it dividends from the banks and RBI and other government entities. So these are all the few things the government can use to control its fiscal deficit. Higher fiscal deficit is not good for the economy because you will not get investments from the foreign companies. Higher fiscal deficit has major counter effects and cascading impacts on other economic factors like growth that we have seen, right? Higher deficit means your rupee will be, your currency will get weakened. If the currency gets weakened, then your foreign capital will not come into your country. Social forces, it's very important. Society is centerpiece of economy and for the industry because you are targeting certain sections of society, segments of society for your products and services. What are the different things which come under society? The lifestyles are changing. The distribution of income is changing. The consumption pattern is changing. Technological changes are happening. So purchasing power is increasing, disposable income is increasing, customer behavior is changing. I need a better product. Earlier I was using a Nokia smaller phone. Today I need to have iPad or a Samsung or a different kind of a phone which brings the whole world into one device. Customer acceptability, societal values are changing. Culture and tradition has changed tremendously in the last decade. Religious practices and beliefs. So these are different things that impact the society factors. So the company should be aware of it, what's happening in the market with regard to these factors. Technological forces. So now the last piece is technological. Last but one. The next one is demographic forces. This one, technological forces. Every company is using technology today, irrespective of the industry, whether it is the banking industry, or it is automobile industry, or telecom industry, or IT industry, or manufacturing industry. The automation is the key word today. Every process is getting automated. You are making more efficient processes. You are making people more effective and productive. You are deploying tools and technologies to ensure that this is happening uninterruptedly to aid financial growth for your organization. So we talk about advancements in industries actually improved. It all finally results in improvement of lifestyles for people across various strata of society. You are creating products for different strata of society in the pyramid. Enterprises heavily invest in technological resources. Technological forces directly affect the efficiency of the organization and especially the IT investments. Because we are talking about today new devices and new product coming into the marketplace, and whether it is Apple iPhone or LED screen television or a car, a foreign car you want to own. So that's completely the taste and the value is changing, and people are looking for more into high-end products. Technological developments can be disruptive, but at the same time can eliminate some of the companies which are in very insignificant player in the market. So technological change is a key thing in your strategy. So you need to factor in that while devising your strategy. Demographic factors we have seen. India has got a young talent pool and English speaking workforce, which is good. That is why the IT industry and BPO industry, these two industries have flourished. Today we are talking about retail industry, we are talking about e-commerce industry, Flipkarts and Myntras and Snapdeals and Jabongs, so disintegration of joint family and spurt in double income families. So this is, double income is both husband and wife earning. So there is a lot of disposable income. The saving rate has doubled. So their capability to invest in new products and services is also gone up substantially. Sunrise sectors like IT, ITES, BPO, they have presented new employment opportunities. Penetration of internet and Internet of Things is what we'll talk about it later. Personal computers have spawned a host of online services like e-commerce, online banking, payments, online payment systems. Everything you can do it on the internet. You don't have to physically go to a bank or a payment center. So everything you can do it at the press of a button on your phone or your laptop or your computer. So a host of online and e-commerce services have become available today. Natural environment is very critical component of the external environment, which will impact the strategy, like the green clearance, forest clearance, environment clearance for setting up factories and facilities. So it affects the projects on account of slow and pending environment clearances from the government. We have seen that a lot in the mining, in the areas of mining, housing, factory, setting up factory plants, anything for that matter. It needs environment clearance from the government. Geographical and ecological factors like natural resources, weather, climatic condition, port facilities are key for business. So any economy to grow beyond a particular level, you need investments to create these facilities. It cannot grow on a business as usual basis, because we have seen that in the last decade. Now we need to go to the next growth trajectory. So we need these factors to be addressed in time. Climatic conditions call for different marketing mix because of global warming and greenhouse effect and El Nino effect. There are so many climatic conditions that we are coming across, the new climate conditions. This year the analysts have forecasted El Nino effect. That's why the rains have fallen. I mean average rainfall has fallen behind the 95 level mark. So there could be some extreme climatic condition. There can be extreme heat on one side during summer. There could be extreme cold during the winter. So those change, those conditions are changing today, climatic changes. So how do you create a different marketing mix? How do you create a product? For a winter side, people never used to have a heater in their home. Now heater can be a product, home heater, or So because similarly for high temperature times during the summer, how do you how are you creating new products to take care of that particular climatic condition? So it will completely change the marketing strategy. Government policies for preservation of environment are the key. So this is again environmental policy for the government. It has to make it simple and easy for businesses to do take approval and clearance from the government. So I think the last UPA government had a major challenge, but I think now it is this thing is being put on top priority. I'm sure it will further improve in the days to come. Environment change and forecasting. Organizations use scanning and forecasting methods to understand what kind of environmental changes happen from time to time, because you have to constantly scan the environment, you have to constantly forecast it. It's a dynamic kind of a activity. Organizations need to have systematic approach of capturing changes in the business environment, analyze potential impact of the business strategy. So There are tools available. There are, because it has to be part of your strategic management process. Otherwise, you'll miss out the key components of change, which keep happening from time to time. Success of business depends on the agility and resilience power of the company to forecast these changes. If you're not responding, if you're not reacting to that, you're reacting later after 3 months, 6 months, this has happened. Now let me put some investment. There are competition who have already done it 6 months back, and they've got a new product. They forecasted it well, and their business will be more flourishing than this company, right? So which is not following, which is not resilient and agile enough to understand these changes or forecast these changes. Business strategy needs to be dynamic enough. This is always a dynamic environment. There is no every day things keep changing. So it is not that strategy has to be changed every day. Strategy has to be changed periodically, as and when there is a need, as and when you sense there is a change happening in the environment or the industry, or in certain areas that we are talking about, government policy or regulatory policy or economic factors or the demographic factors changing over a period of time, the societal values are changing over a period of time, technology is changing over a period of time. So all these changes have to be constantly reviewed from time to time. It's an ongoing process in the strategic management process. Environment scanning activities include increased awareness of environment, these changes, these factors, pest analysis that we did just now. So how do you do a better strategic planning? Proper diversification and allocation of resources to take care of that particular change. Predicting the future events is a challenge, but everybody has a similar challenge. How can I predict what will happen in 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, or 2 years, 3 years from now? But you need to have a fair amount of intuition in terms of what is happening in the environment, what is happening in the industry, what is happening in the marketplace, what's happening in the global environment. It's collectively you need to come to a decision. Yeah, this is what the industry is moving into. So I need to get there. This is what the environment is changing. The global environment is changing. Indian environment is changing. There is a new government in place. Now can I take more investment? Will I get returns? Can I create most value for my stakeholders? So predicting futures is an art and science. Every organization learns it through experience, and that's how the wisdom gets created. Organizations need to subscribe to analyst reports and IDC, Gartner, I talked about all these things. Come. You have to buy those reports and journals to review the updates, and media coverage gives a lot of information. Organization needs to deploy forecasting techniques. Let's talk about some of the forecasting techniques also. There's no one rule that fits all. There's no one size fits all. But there's a combination of forecasting techniques you can use in order to predict your future, predict the future environment, forecast what's going to happen 6 months, 1 year down the line. So this is time series analysis. Is extrapolated data from the past. You have past data and then you can extrapolate it. You have empirical forecasting procedure. Use historical trends to predict the new trends. Factors such as seasonal fluctuations will be Diwali time, New Year time, the sales will be high. Summer time, it could be different. So how do you forecast that? The other one is Delphi. It is basically people are employed who have expertise required, specialized expertise required, and they independently, repeatedly ask questions about the probability of some event. They'll interview. Assessment of probability continue till consensus is reached, through this iteration process. So this is another thing. So this is a collective information, collective wisdom, wherein iterative process takes you to a consensus it's like polling. It's like doing a polling of 10 people and say, what's going to be the interest rate regime? What's going to be the inflation trajectory? What's going to be the external factor, external exchange rate? So this technique can be used. Judgmental forecasting. This is taken by relationship between two variables is very complex, which is always, as I said, predicting the future is the most critical challenge. Variety of sources like including customers, employees, you interview them, customers, employees, suppliers, analysts, economists, and then data is collected, compiled, and into a composite format. You basically create a composite format, and then arrive at a forecasting plan, and this is what my budget is going to be. This is what my revenue growth is going to be. You can do a bottom-up construct from your customers or from your sales team, marketing team. So these are some of the techniques that you can use. Multiple scenario forecasting, so you can use multiple scenarios to scenario 1, what if scenario 2, what if scenario 3. So what if scenarios can be created over here to formulate a strategy, and it's all about complete description about future events, identification of key forces of the macroeconomic environment. As I said, what if analysis is used, creating scenario building, different scenarios. What if high inflation scenario, medium inflation scenario, low inflation scenario, high high exchange rate scenario, medium exchange rate scenario. So your company's budget gets built based on certain scenarios. So that's why it's called multiple scenario forecasting. Contingency plans can be made, risk mitigation plans can be made with a level of probability and impact it can have on your company's P&L and balance sheet. So in a nutshell, from a summary perspective, we have had a detailed discussion on this particular topic. It's a most important topic before the next chapter, which is strategy. Next chapter of getting into the organizational vision and mission and strategy. Up to this, we talked about industry analysis and competition analysis and external environment analysis. So this is, we talked about everything. We talked about companies can deploy various tools and analysis in the external environment. External environment consists of political, legal, regulatory, economic, social and technological and demographic and ecological factors. Organizations should assess environment changes through environment scanning and forecast, should have the ability to predict and do a forecast for the environment, so that any evolution in the state, any evaluation of changes happening in the economy is clearly reflected in the strategy making. Strategy making is a dynamic process, and this forecasting, scanning and forecasting is also a dynamic process. There are multiple tools and methodologies available. It is up to the organization, depending on which business they are in, which industry they are in, which market they want to address. You can take a decision on how you want to go about, how do you want to really predict those environments. So net, this chapter clearly presents, before you get into the strategy formulation, you need to be thorough in terms of what business you're doing, what industry you belong to, what business you are doing, and who are your competition, what does the external environment look like. If you don't have these answers, I think it is very, I don't think any amount of strategy making is not going to help. So the organization's priority is to understand these nitty-gritties, understand these implications, and then get into the strategy formulation mode. So I'm sure you have understood most of the concepts. If you have any issue or understanding, please do let me know. I will meet you in the next chapter, chapter 4, very soon. Thank you for your time. Thank you.